Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Today Mañana. You're gonna see us shortly. We have an exciting show for you today. Be sure to share it. Let everyone know what's going on today. We're gonna have on Lily Dare, that she is gonna come on and talk about just everything from the arts to entrepreneurship. We're gonna talk about what she's doing, what she's up to in Charlottesville. She's always has a lot that she is up to.
Always
so
something going on with Lily, right?
A fantastic conversation with Lily Dare, so she's going to join us. And then Xavier and I were going to talk a little bit about what's going on with all the money flows.
Money
we're going to do a little bit of follow the money. Follow the money in the stock market.
And today's one of those days where you have to talk about taxes. Nobody wants to talk about taxes, right?
But it's the traditional tax day.
April 15th, right?
April 15th. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And
how to avoid taxes, really.
How to
pay taxes. We all know how to
save
do that.
without being hammered by those that tax trap. So all that's going to be today. On Today Mañana, so make sure you join us. Go ahead, feel free to comment,
ask
let
questions.
us know, ask questions,
absolutely.
Of us. Let us know what you think. As always, the rule is you can tell Xavier that he's wrong. You cannot tell me that I'm wrong. Because I'm sure you'll all have something to say for Xavier.
This is supposed to be a debate. It's not right or wrong. It's a debate.
They can debate you for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Xavier is very debatable. So
what does that mean, undebatable? I don't know. You can debate with me, or just me, my existing is debatable? I don't know. Are we going there right now?
They can interpret that any way they want. But be sure to join us, share, let everyone know what's going on today. Be sure to share with your friends, comment, let us know what you're thinking on Today Mañana. We're going to be starting any minute. Let's do it. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today y Mañana. I'm Alex Serpi. This is Xavier. We're just so happy to have you joining us this morning on a bright and sunny morning.
Beautiful day.
A beautiful day in Charlottesville. As always, we are presented by Emergent Financial Services. We are powered by Cristel Noel State Farm, and we are partnering with Forward Adelante, the premier Latino networking group here in Charlottesville. And I mean, before we even get started, the important news, April 15th, some of you may know this as Tax Day. Some of the historians may know it as the day that Abraham Lincoln died. But we know it in our family as Mike Lerpe's birthday, which is much better.
So happy birthday, Mikey.
A very happy birthday to Mike Lerpe, one of the major members of the Lerpe family. He's always there behind the scenes.
You know, it's interesting because the day he was born, right, which was April 15th, I thought about that and I said, actually that's a good day because you always think of April 15th, and why we don't know, right? But you always think of April 15th as the day you have to pay your taxes, right? Because the last day you can pay your taxes. Mm-hmm. Even though we pay our taxes every single day, and by that time, most people have at least, submitted their taxes, right? So when he came in that day, it's like, this is great because now, right, I can think of April 15th as something much better, right? And so I'm proud of Michael.
I think his delivering doctor, didn't you say like he made a tract that basically, this is Tax Day and the day that Abraham Lincoln died.
So he put a squash on that for the Lerpe family. There you are.
He tried, but you can't keep down the joy that is Michael Lerpe and the fun that is Michael Lerpe.
Exactly.
So very happy birthday to him on this day. And man, so much happening with the markets recently, just with the ups and downs and the inflows and the outflows. And I know one of the things we've been thinking about, because we often get asked a lot, because one of the challenges when you're investing, I think, especially in the stock market, is do I follow where the money is? Do I know where the money's going? And the challenging part about now is that the money seems to be going everywhere and just pouring in. I mean, you've got some insane statistics on just what the market's been doing in the past 3 months alone.
And I do have to thank our research department, which is Michael and Nicholas, for all this information that I get. And they make me look really smart, which is of course their job. So they're doing a great job.
They're doing it well.
But anyway, so there was this article which was generated by Bank of America research department. So it's not something that I'm just pulling off the top of my head, which I seem to do sometimes, but not that they're always wrong.
So take it up with Bank of America.
Exactly. If you don't believe me, go look it up yourself. But it said that in the last 3 months, right, the inflows into equity funds, and this is globally, not just U.S., but globally, was about $542 billion. And actually, the last 5 months. And the last 5 months, the inflows has been greater than the combined last 12 years put together. I mean, that's an enormous amount. 5 months inflows into equity markets is greater than in the last 12 years. Now, this has a lot to do with the fact that we're not the only country that's done a huge stimulus, right? So there's a lot of money that is just going into people's pockets, right? In addition to being paid their salary, they're still getting some money, and they say, what do I do with this? Well, let me put it into the equity market.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing. Second of all, we've talked about this before. We have the central banks in the world basically just pumping money out there.
A lot of zeros at the end.
Yeah, and buying anything they want. So that has also initiated this impetus into the stock markets. So the one thing that I also wanted to indicate, which I think is rather interesting, is that if you take a look at since 2008, there's about $1 trillion that went into the stock markets, and about 2.4 trillion that went into bonds. And again, this is global, so this is global bonds, global stocks. Now I scratch my head and say, and the reason I'm saying this is because we sit around a lot of times and say, are we going to see a market crash? Are we going to see a market correction? What are we going to see in the market? And although you and I are a believer that you got to be in it to win it, and yes, there's going to be instances where the markets go down. Those are more opportunities than anything else. But we also think about it, is that going to happen, right? And when can it happen? But I think about this. So if you think about $2.4 trillion in international bonds, and we've talked about this before, $16 trillion of international bonds have negative yields, right? So what does that mean? I mean, it's like you invest money.
You invest money, and they're promising to give you back less than you invested. It's
right?
like, thank you for giving me $100. I'll give you back 99
That's right.
in 5 years.
What is your thought? Do you think that at any point in time, any of that $2.4 trillion will be going into stocks? Your thoughts?
You figure at some point it has to. I mean, you cannot sit there and say that investors are going to be putting their money into negative yields in perpetuity. Unless they're really, I mean, you would have to be
unless
basically
it's the central
afraid.
banks too.
Unless it's the central banks. I mean, the central banks will buy it no matter what. I think the question is for other investors out there, especially the large institutions, right? The only reason to put your money in a negative yielding bond is basically you're so afraid of what might happen in the stock market that you say, I would rather intentionally lose 1-2% than accidentally lose 10 or more.
Exactly.
Right? And we just haven't been seeing that happening, though. I mean, no one is looking at the stock market saying, yeah, I expect some kind of massive crash.
Because it's all, we talked about that, right? So the point is, when you at the beginning you said the flow of money, money is like a liquid. It's like water. It just flows around. It never stays in the same place. So it keeps moving. It keeps moving to different places. It doesn't become stagnant. And so money, you got to look at the flow of money. You can't, and I tell people all the time now, you just can't look at the economy and say, oh, is the economy going to grow and therefore the stock market's going to go up? Forget about it. It's gone. It's finished. That's done. You got to follow the market. Where's the money going? And as long as let's face it, not just the U.S., but the rest of the world, as long as there's an enormous amount of money, stimulus money going into the market, I mean, we're seeing it here, and we've seen it here. We're going to continue to see it. As long as that money continues to be created, eventually it's got to go somewhere. And it doesn't always go to where we want it to go. In other words, if you do an infrastructure bill, you'd like it to go for infrastructure. Same thing around the globe. But sometimes it doesn't happen.
It always gets siphoned off a little by little on the way down.
So that money goes somewhere. And I think that the stock markets is an area where it's going to continue to flow into. And so it's, when you look at these kind of numbers, $542 billion flowing into equity funds in the last 5 months, that's an enormous amount of money.
Huge amount of money.
Enormous.
And which is why we're always talking with people about you want to be in the market. The goal is not to try and be smart and pick the perfect time to get in. It's not to say, okay, I think I'm at the bottom, let me go in now, or let me wait a little because it might be the top. When you try to play those games, you may end up missing out on important days that you wanted to be in. And you cannot beat, we always say that you can't beat the system. And so if you can't beat them, join them, right? In the sense of you, as long as you are in the markets, you have the potential to go up. And as long as you're investing little by little over time, there's going to be times where some of the money you're saving goes in at the bottom. Sometimes the money's going to come in at the top.
That's right.
But as long as you're in, right, you then get to participate in the growth and where the flows are going. Because it really is, it comes down to supply and demand.
It does.
Just like everything else. We just sit there all day and think about, well, what is this stock intrinsically worth? What is Tesla really worth? Or what is, Coca-Cola really worth? Right? But at the end of the day, if more people want to own Coca-Cola stock and then want to sell Coca-Cola stock, price of Coca-Cola goes up.
Absolutely.
More people want Tesla than think Tesla is a crazy idea. Tesla's going to go up. And it doesn't matter what all our math says is the real secret value of Tesla. What matters is, do more people want Tesla than don't want Tesla? And that's what controls it. And right now, there are inflows into the stock market. And that's what controls ultimately the supply and demand. And it may come down to money, like you said, money's always flowing in and out. But you want to be in on the long term.
No, you do, and I remember, one of the traders that I know, and this was in bonds. He always used to tell me the same thing. He says, people forecast interest rates all the time. They tell you this is what's going to happen to the markets. Interest rates going to go up. Interest rates going to go down. He says that's just a lot of baloney, because the bottom line is the flow of capital coming in and out. It's the demand, the supply and demand. And he used to say, if I see an enormous demand of bonds, interest rates are going down. If I see no demand for bonds, interest rates are going up. He says it's very simple. But the economists of the world, they have to earn a living too, and so they tell you what's going to happen, even though there's 50% to tell you one thing, 50% to the other thing. Exactly. And so sooner or later, they're both right, but at different points in time.
It's the old joke with the president in the room with the mathematician, the statistician, and the economist.
Right.
And the mathematician, the president basically says, ask them an economic question like, where's GDP going? And the mathematician's like, well, here, I'll give you this math, and if you calculate this is the answer. And then he goes to the accountant, and the accountant's like, oh, I'll give you a range. If you do this, maybe GDP will grow like this. If you look at it this way, maybe GDP will grow like this. And then he goes to the economist. The economist goes to the room. He closes all the windows and all the shades, makes sure there's no cameras, no one's listening. And he leans into the president, and he goes, what do you want it to be? Like, I'll get you the number you want it to be. So it's just, we can play these games all day long, but ultimately it's a simple answer.
It is, yeah.
It's supply and demand, and the question is just how did we participate as the average person, right? Just trying to save for retirement. How do we participate in this really complicated network of funds and money inflows and outflows while trying to save as much as possible and not lose anything to tax drag and other forces that may, inhibit our retirement plans.
Exactly.
And that's really the goal, to just make sure that our money is there
when we retire. That's right. Yeah, and that's that's one of the things that I truly just wanted to touch upon also, is that because it is April 15th.
In honor
of April 15th.
In honor of what used to be taxed. I mean, this year it's been moved to May 17th, so it's not quite as exciting.
This year's moved. Who knows? Maybe
it's been moving a little bit lately.
The new normal.
The new normal.
We'll never know what tax day is, right?
Tax day. But in honor of the traditional April 15th tax day, and in honor of Michael's birthday, we'll talk a little taxes on Today Mañana.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll like that. Yeah. So there's. In the last few years, right, without any doubt, we've seen probably some of the lowest tax rates that this country's ever seen, right? And so looking forward, I think everybody expects eventually tax rates to go up. So people always say, what do I do? How do I prepare for that? How do I save for that? And then there are really two forms to save when you save for retirement. One is you do a traditional IRA. And the other one is a Roth IRA. And I know you're very good at this, and even though I know it, I'll let you explain the difference between both of them and why it's important to think about it in today's environment, because even though one may seem more beneficial, in reality, if you think about a long perspective, it is very possible that, maybe
it's not
the
quite
Roth,
as simple as you might think. Well, it's always interesting because I think one of the big misconceptions that will often get asked is are the investments different? If I do a traditional IRA, or a traditional IRA is basically the same in terms of tax-wise as your 401ks, your SEP IRAs, your simple IRAs. In other words, the money goes in before you pay taxes on it.
And it's an account. You open an account and it's called a traditional IRA.
It's called a traditional IRA.
Exactly.
And the question we always get is, are the investments different? I said, no, the investments are exactly the same. What matters between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA is how it's treated tax-wise.
Exactly.
Is what happens with the money you put in. And basically what happens is that when any dollar you put into a traditional IRA below certain income limits, the IRS says if you are extremely wealthy, you can't get away with putting away your money tax-free. They will come get that money. You can't avoid that. But the traditional IRA, basically, when the money you put in there comes in before you've paid taxes on it. So you don't end up paying it. You put $5,000 in there, the government looks at it and says, as far as we're concerned, you didn't make that $5,000. You can put that money in. Whereas a Roth IRA, the money gets taxed before it goes in. Right? So you get your $5,000, you pay taxes on it, put it in your Roth, it's in there now. Right? What happens is on the flip side, when you pull your money out of a traditional IRA at the end in retirement, government comes back and says, I didn't tax you before, so I'm going to tax you now.
That's right.
And they also put a couple restrictions. You can't get it before 59 and a half, or I'm going to penalize you.
After 70.
And after 72, the government's like, you got to pull out that money now because I want those taxes.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas with the Roth IRA, you don't get taxed on it on the back end. So the government basically says you can leave it in there as long as you want because I gain nothing by you taking money out of this account. And typically speaking, I think a lot of people would like to save your taxes now. Because you think the thinking is usually how when I retire, my taxes might be lower.
Well, they should be lower. The assumption is you're not working, so you don't have a salary, so therefore you'd be a lower tax bracket.
Mm-hmm. But I think the challenge people are facing now is there is the potential that taxes may be higher in the future. Just when you looked at the way that the debt that we've accumulated, at some point somebody is paying for it.
That's right.
And so the question is, will
you?
Me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice to know that I'm subsidizing your retirement.
It's about time.
I guess you subsidized the first 18 years of my life, and now I'm subsidizing your retirement. But there's a potential that they will be higher. So I think it opens up some new questions as to really dig down and think about and speak with your financial advisor about
exactly. And that's what I meant. It's really important because I don't think, in the past that was typically an easy solution. First, you fund your traditional IRA because you save taxes today, right? And better saving taxes today than mañana, right? However, given where we are with tax rates today, given the fact that I don't think there's any doubt, we're already seeing the fact that they're going to raise taxes on corporations, so that's going to impact everybody, right? And I think it's coming, right? So like you said, we've got to pay for this debt somehow. So the question is, should I be thinking about taking advantage of the low tax rates today, putting someone into a Roth? So people really have to think about that because it's a very important decision they're making today, so that basically, when they're ready to retire, they have a nice balance, especially if you have a 401k. That's already like a traditional IRA. You may be wanting to fund some Roth today, so that when you get to that point, you know exactly what you need to do and from what account you're going to be pulling when you retire. So it's
making
important.
sure that the plan is there and all your assets are in place, and it's just maximizing that. You've done the hard work, right, of saving money to retire. You want to maximize what you take out at the end. You want to get as close to dollar for dollar as possible. If I saved $1, I would very much like $1 to be there at the end, not 75 cents. Out of that dollar.
And be honest, there's, how many times do we talk to people that have no clue about the fact that there's different accounts? They just don't even know. So, this is not the language of the normal person. They don't go around talking in the street about Roths and traditional. This is something that's special. But, especially if you do your own taxes, you might not even think about it. If you have a tax person, they might come back to you and say, hey, you should put some money into a traditional or a Roth or whatever. But I think it's important for people to begin to understand that, there are ways to save on taxes both today and tomorrow. So I think that's
And
important.
it's always just things to think about, especially I think as entrepreneurs, because a lot of times you're pretty much in charge of. I mean, if you're not working for another company that's giving you a 401k and saying, "Yeah, just opt in, we'll take care of this." I mean, you're in charge of your own retirement.
That's right.
You know, and so it's just another thing to think about on top of everything that we know entrepreneurs have to think about in today's day and age. Just all
And
these
it's not
different steps.
it is not a difficult one. In other words, you just have to recognize that there's an opportunity there for you, and that opportunity is such that you want to be able to begin to save today, right? So that you know when retirement comes, you have a balance of funds that are were pre-tax and funds that are post-tax. So at that time, once again, depending where you are, depending what taxes are, depending on your age, depending on Social Security, you know that there's
flexibility,
exactly
options.
a bundle of assets that you now have flexibility over, and that's so important.
That's the goal.
Exactly.
One of those parts of entrepreneurship.
So tips for tax day. Yeah.
Tips for tax day.
A little late. No, it's not actually. It's not late. So you have till.
Yeah, you do. Yes, you have another month and 2 days to take advantage of everything that Xavier and I just told you today. To talk to your financial professional, to your financial advisor, and
you can always start for next year. I mean, it's just that if there's an opportunity for this year, why not take it? Why give the government something that you earned and you worked hard for?
You don't have to,
right.
Especially if the government's saying no. You can keep it.
Unless you really like. Doing that, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
But there's some charities that might appreciate it even more.
That's true. Very true.
That's the way I look at it.
And very true. Very true. I always keep that in mind. Yeah, and speaking.
We have somebody special that walked in.
Somebody special that just
She's already smiling, which put a smile on my face. Isn't that great?
This is going to be fun. So we are joined today by Lily Darai from, in fact, just herself. There's no. You can't put Lily in a box. That's what it is.
That's true.
You can't figure out what title.
She's the epitome of out of the box. Is that what it is?
She is. She's just she's involved in so many things. I mean, singing, songwriting, entrepreneurship, record label, however that works in the music business. She'll tell us about that. Just so many things that Lily's involved in, and so it's fantastic to have her on. Lily, thank you so much.
Hi. Good morning, you guys.
Good morning,
It's so
Lily.
good to see you.
So good to see
Same
you
here.
too.
Love hearing you talk about the Roth IRA.
Lily's a big fan.
Really? Come on.
Let me just say, I trust Alex or P with my finances every day. Xavier, I don't know, but Alex any day.
I knew that was coming.
That.
I just
you
knew
should have
it.
seen that
Had
coming.
to.
So Lily, I mean, for people that don't know you, when we say Lily, when I say the name Lily, what do you tell people about yourself? How do you describe yourself and your brand?
Do we have enough time for this? Are you sure?
Oh, we've got time. That's why we did the whole show for Lily.
So
we said we need to put some time.
No, when you emailed me asking me for a title, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. So I kind of just go under this big label of all things creative. But I think at the core of everything that I do, it's just people and helping people talk about their dreams, especially that's a huge one for me. Kind of just going after whatever you feel like is in your heart. And so whether that's through PR, through marketing, through artist management, through my own music and songwriting, I kind of just want my life to be an overflow of helping other people and just, I don't know, it's so cheesy to say, but just making the world a better place, in my own corner, and hoping that impacts overall.
The tips that you do.
And that's it's interesting because you could do that with art, right? I mean, when you have that artistic talent, that's something you can do, right? So
you could do it in any way. I mean, Alex helping me with my finances has helped my world and has helped me talk about it with my friend in New York.
Make the world a better place too.
Yeah, so I feel like I've been able to talk about it with friends that I've graduated college with, and they had no idea these were even options. And I'm so shocked that now I can understand a lot of what you guys were saying earlier.
Just a little bit, though.
Just a little bit, okay. But better than zero.
She's looking for my job. I could tell already.
You never know. You have to be adaptable. It's 2021.
She would probably sell better than you do.
Easy. With that smile, she can sell anything.
Aw, thanks.
But yeah, so how did you get initially, did you always feel this way about your path in terms of starting your brand and going out there? Or is it something you sort of grew into over time just from Lily loving art and singing to Lily all things creative? I mean, is that something
Yeah.
you had to go in over time and really cultivate, or is it something that from a young age you're like, oh, you can't put me in a box. I'm always just all things creative.
I think I've always been like Little Miss Independent. That's definitely bitten me a few times. But my brother's been on the show, and you guys have talked to him, and you guys know my grandma. And I think that it's so funny, like growing up in my family, it was almost like not an option to not be an entrepreneur. And I think over time it's developed, and we've gotten to see like, okay, this is what the real world is like. I think my parents were really big champions of our dreams, and like, oh, this is what you want to do. Like, just do it. Like, let's go for it. And like, what does that mean? And just really giving me a lot of opportunities to go for it, and like not choosing traditional schooling. And I think all those things were like really helpful. But I was just talking to somebody yesterday about how in high school, I seemed to have like this confidence and this resilience that like couldn't be shattered. And I've just been thinking about how over time it has kind of been shattered a little bit. Like I didn't ever know until I think college really that being a woman was something that could potentially stop me, or that being Latina was ever going to be a roadblock. I had no idea. And so that's been really like kind of heartbreaking as I've gotten older, but it's also made me more empathetic, I think, of just how there are people that might have all these dreams, but they don't have any opportunity. And so, like, what does that mean for me as a person that has a little bit more to give? Like, how can I offer that back? And then how do I also do it for myself? And so I think I'm really coming into my own of like, okay, this is what I love to do, and this is also what I need to do to pay my bills. And so trying to compartmentalize, but also not too much because I feel like that's unhealthy. So yeah, that's just.
So how do you overcome that? Like, because I guess you began to have experiences starting in college where people were people or institutions were putting up roadblocks. How did you sort of push through that, and really like say, all right, here's this obstacle. How do I overcome it?
So I think I honestly am super blessed to have the dad that I have. He has always believed in me so big. And he's always been able to have these conversations with me about like his experiences growing up as a Latino. And I think that that's been really empowering to have somebody that I know is like really safe for me and that is going to encourage me no matter what. And then I think I've had really great friends surrounding me, like including you guys, that have just really uplifted me and given me a chance to work in marketing or to work an event or things like that. And even seeing, my grandma be an entrepreneur in this city, she never clued me in on the kind of lashback she would ever get or the way people would look down on her sometimes. And I think that for me, starting to realize that, I'm like, oh, well, she never showed that it affected her. And so I think it's like this resilience of, let me deal with this kind of thing in private. And if I need to deal with it in public at all, then yes, but like just keep pushing through. And I think just like having really good conversations with people and being more open has been really helpful.
So do you think that sometimes putting barriers make people even stronger? I mean, I always think about that, right? In other words, if you go through life without any challenges, everything seems very, very easy, right? But when you are challenged from whatever avenue, right, in any way, doesn't that make you stronger? I mean, granted, there are some people that can't overcome that.
Yeah.
We can understand that. But isn't it true that sometimes that's what makes you even, more, stronger and gets you maybe more motivated to succeed?
Yeah, I think the hurdles are really good. But I think that we need to be conscious of the fact that some people have bigger hurdles than others.
Sure.
And so I think the biggest hurdle, honestly, is yourself. And the mindset of, I can't do this. I'm never going to succeed. It's never going to work out for me. I've fallen into that trap plenty of times. It's hard getting a no every single time you submit a song somewhere. Or no when you audition for something. It's tough. But I think you have to remember, like, mental health is something very important to take care of, and that what's in your head isn't always the truth.
Right.
And so I think just, like, talking out loud with people and just having conversations and trying to figure out what those barriers are for you, and then dealing with them instead of like using everything as a coping mechanism, I think is really important. But those are not conversations that I'm seeing a lot of. So those are ones that I want to have with people and that I try to facilitate.
Yeah, I remember talking with Olga. So Olga Morris, Lily's grandma, is founder of Forward Adelante, and I remember talking with her once just about like I think they often talk like the really low expectations. Like one of the biggest barriers wasn't even someone like putting up a wall in the sense of you can't, I'm going to prevent you from doing this. Like the barrier was actually just the way they said it. Like, well, this is not what Latinos do.
Yeah.
Like, Latinos have to be in these lines of business, and if you're not in this line of business, you're not really professional. You don't go into the professional spheres. You don't stay out of this. And she sort of started the Forward Adelante magazine to show no. Like Latinos do these things, and we are successful at them. So it's almost like the barrier was like not so much like something physical, like tangible, but almost like a mentality that other people would put on Latinos to say, no, you don't even bother trying because you can't do this.
Yeah, I think this conversation I had with this person yesterday was just this great long conversation, and we were talking about how Charlottesville is a lot of talk. And a lot of, we want diversity and this and that, but they're never really willing to deal with like some of the root issues or some of the political issues that are happening. And so it's hard for people to ever get out of this cycle because there aren't opportunities that are even being given. And there's a lot of pushback, and it's this constant, you're constantly asking yourself, how come there's so much pushback for me to do something? Or, how do I dress more preppy to fit into this Charlottesville culture? Even wearing hoops, I've been called ghetto in Charlottesville. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, these are just hoops. Like, what does that even mean? And why are we even using that as a descriptive word? And so I think you just have to remember, like, okay, not everybody's going to understand what I'm doing or where I'm coming from, but that's okay. I'm not here for them. I'm here to lean into who I am and be all that God has created me to be and allow that to open doors for me and keep pushing through in areas that you can. I think discontentment is a huge issue in our culture right now, especially it's a microwave society. And I think remembering that it's okay for you to start in somebody's backyard and not necessarily JPJ, So, going from that to that, I think it's just important to remember that, there's going to be barriers, but
so how do you speak to deep perseverance as a trait of entrepreneurs and just in your own life? Because I know it's a long, especially the arts path is a long path.
Yeah.
In terms of it's not like you just start singing and performing somewhere and then magically you get discovered by some incredibly huge record company that says, yes, this is the person, let's do it. And now you're instantly everywhere, right? It involves a lot of perseverance. And so how do you sort of keep that faith going through the tough times when you're getting a lot of no's? And just for other entrepreneurs out there, when they're getting a lot of no's or no one's coming into their shop or no one's coming into their restaurant because it's a tough time, how do you sort of keep going despite that?
Yeah. So I obviously can't speak to the restaurant or small business sector because that's tough, especially in a place like Charlottesville where rent is so extremely high, which gets me so passionate. I think it's really tough to be a business owner here. So I'm really sorry I can't speak into that aspect, but I can say that for me, it's been a lot of figuring out who I am and being okay with that, being okay with this is my personality. And then also remembering what is my purpose? What is my vision for my life? And I'm not saying create a 5-year plan, 2-year plan. It's just how am I going to steward what I have today well? And then the third thing is, what are you surrounding yourself with? If every single day you go home and all you're doing is watching TV, which I love Netflix, but if all you're doing is coping with the hurt, that's all you're ever going to be doing. You're never going to make it out of this cycle. And there's days when you don't want to get out of bed or it is tough, and so wallow in that for a second, but also ask your friends to keep you accountable. And just for me, what that means is saying, hey, like, Maria, this is like what I'm passionate about. Like, can we check in? Or like, can we just have this conversation about why I'm feeling this way? Having creative friends like Alex that get it, that like, you know, there is a lot of rejection in submitting things. And so having those real conversations and being like, look, this really hurts that I didn't get like what I wanted, which for me is really tough to tap into because I don't like feeling anything but like happiness. So it is like a thing that you have to just work on and like do the hard work. And it's like tough, but at the end of the day, I think I always feel so much better knowing I made healthier decisions for my life. And that's like what keeps me going. And then I go to this really great church in town, and like I think having something consistent that I go to has been really helpful in surrounding myself with community, because I think isolation is such a lie. And people say like, to be a leader, you have to be lonely and you have to be willing to risk this and risk that. And I don't get it. Like,
yeah, we've heard that from none. It's funny because all the entrepreneurs we've had on, I think a couple of them, I remember from El Bebedero, they were saying the same thing, that it's about who you surround yourself. If you surround yourself with people that are negative and saying, no, you can't do this, you're failing, give up, then it makes life so much harder. Like you're tempted to give up. But when you surround yourself with people who encourage you and are positive, then you're able to persevere through
and that's
the
very
challenges.
important. That's very important. And just a tip for you, because this really worked for me, well for me. When you're having bad days, what you do is you go buy a box of donuts. So the next morning, you know you're going to wake up with a smile. All right, so just a tip, you know.
Fine line of coping and being excited for the next day.
Sometimes
I'll email myself.
Psychology 101. I mean, I never took the course, but I guarantee you that's probably what they teach you there.
Oh yeah.
You'll email yourself?
I'll email myself at night and be like, hey, don't forget there's waffles.
There you are. You see.
So the next morning I'll wake up and be like, oh my God, there's waffles. So it's little things like that. But I think too, back to the positivity piece. Something I saw going around Instagram, which I thought was so dumb, was like this concept of toxic positivity. And I do think that there's sometimes this positivity that like denies that there's anything else going on.
Crazy recklessness.
But I think that it's important to be surrounded by positive people. That doesn't mean you're not going to help somebody who's sad. That doesn't mean that you're not going to admit you're sad. But I do think that who you surround yourself with, like, it might be hard, even if it's like family, but sometimes you do have to cut out those voices in order to make it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Speaking of Instagram, because now that you sort of put my head into a slightly different tact on the question, what are some of the ways that you like use to promote your brand? I know Instagram is a big part of it, like just to get the word out there, either as an artist or as an entrepreneur, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs we're always looking for ways to grow the brand. And so how do you kind of approach, because I mean there's so many websites and webinars on how to use social media. So how do you kind of approach the use of social media or anything else to really grow your brand? What do you think is important to keep in mind?
So I think my brother, when he was doing this show, said
it
so freaking well. If you are this great person online and somebody meets you in person and you are just not a great person, like, it's gonna show. And if you're being one person online and inauthentic in person, I think that is gonna show through your brand at some point, even if it's not today or tomorrow. Anytime you're being disingenuine to like who you really are or like what you're really about, it's gonna show through. And the word of mouth has always been and will always be the best referral. I always defer to my friends when I release a new song, and I'm like, hey, do you mind sharing this on your Instagram story? Hey, do you mind adding this to a playlist? Learning the things that are beneficial to my field, and then asking my friends to help me out. And more times than not, your friend is going to be like, yeah, of course I can do that for you. I just needed to be asked. Like, I didn't know that this is something that you wanted. And I think little conversations like that also help get you out of your head, right? But I mean, even in finance, I found that like I referred my friend to you. And she would have never found you because she lives in New York. And so things like that, like you can have 1 million followers on Instagram, but who's really buying from you? And who's really buying into what you're putting out there? It's the people that know you the best. And those are the people that are going to sustain you when/if your business fails, or you have to pivot. or a pandemic hits, so always defer to the most loyal people. And sometimes those are on Instagram, sometimes they're on Facebook, sometimes they're not. But yeah.
Yeah, I've talked about it with Jerry that like the virtual means of communication is like virtual means, at least it used to mean almost. But not as good as. Because like if you're virtually a genius, it means you're not really a genius.
Really
you're just
genius.
almost a genius.
Yeah.
And so like all these things, they replicate that in-person word of mouth referral, but it's not exactly the same. The goal is like, how do you get to that point?
Well, right. So if my friend shares my song on their story, it's going to speak volumes more than me sharing it on my own story.
That's
because
true.
it means somebody
That's
else
true.
thinks it's cool. So then if I repost what they've posted, it kind of helps me, get the word out there and also show like, hey, there are other people besides me that are interested in what I created.
Yep.
And, sometimes people get really upset because what they're selling or what they want to sell isn't selling. And it's sad because you really believed in this product, you really believed in this song, but it's not going viral. Reevaluate. Is that something you actually need to go viral? Or is it this art that you created that isn't going to go viral? Or do you need to launch a different product? And so I think like don't be afraid of failing, or don't be afraid of it not succeeding in the way you wanted for it to succeed. That doesn't mean it's not a good product. It doesn't mean it's not a good song or a good piece of art. It just means that this isn't it just didn't hit this time, but maybe something else will. Or maybe that song will in 10 years. There's a song that's going viral on TikTok right now that these guys wrote 10 years ago.
Wow.
So you never know. So I feel like don't be discouraged by I tell Alex this all the time. We talk about it all the time. Don't be discouraged. One of my artists, he texted me yesterday like, Lily, how many blogs should I submit to? And I was like, if you submit to 30, you'll maybe get 3. So you'll get maybe a 1% return. And so that's how people are growing their brands. You have to reach out to so many.
So Alex is
to
becoming a
persevere.
singer? Is that what you're trying to tell me that I don't
Right,
know about?
right. No, but I mean, it's true. I noticed the same thing with my stories that Liz's been encouraging me when I submit short stories to places, to publications. Don't keep going. Don't be discouraged.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like one story that I recently got published in a literary magazine, it was like one of those ones where
I remember that one. That's right.
exactly one of those ones where I said, it's probably not my best. Right, and then I have all these other ones that like, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one that's going to get published. And those don't. And this one, just out of the blue, that I'd completely forgotten about. Yeah, we'd like to publish this one. So you never know what the timing is, what maybe you're ready. I mean, we've had more people asked us for financial plans in the last 3 months than in the previous years
Exactly.
combined, because
It's like
the
that
timing
statistic.
became right. The timing of
Yeah.
people maybe before the pandemic weren't thinking about financial
That's
plans,
right.
and now they are. And so you keep going, but also how do you as sort of a
Before you go,
go for it.
I
do
know,
you wanna go for?
I know her grandmother's probably listening, so she's going to have to say something in
Yeah,
Spanish.
it's true.
You know that, right?
Oh, I
just
practiced
have
saying
to.
hola, hola when I
No,
got on,
más
but
que
I
hola,
didn't do
because,
it.
she speaks Spanish, and I think the whole world's waiting for her to say at least one sentence.
Okay.
So at the next question, you got to ask her in Spanish, see what she
In
does.
Spanish, I'll do one other in Spanish. I have a different one that I'll do in
Oh, okay,
Spanish.
okay.
We'll do
prepared one.
we'll do
Uh-oh.
consejos para latinos. En
She didn't get the
español.
question, though, right? I mean, this has to
No,
be
there's
on
no.
the spot.
Lily is totally on the spot
Okay,
here. I
good.
sent her no
Oh,
questions.
I
in
didn't get any
advance.
questions. This is
No questions in advance. Oh, we do have one time. We have Melissa de Zamora says,
Hola.
"Hi, Lily."
¿Cómo estás, Melissa? Oh, this is actually, I don't know if I can do this, but this is from Melissa de Zamora. She sells really cute jewelry. And so I always wear this. It's like one of the things she gave me. And then, I don't have it on. But I
Awesome.
usually
Check
wear
her
another
out.
bracelet.
Check her
Yeah.
out. And so what?
Yeah.
Oh, now you almost made me lose the question
Well, no,
I was
you had
going
a question
to ask.
for her in English, but that's okay.
I had a question in English for Lily that I now lost track of because
We were
you
talking about my
interrupted.
grandma. No, we weren't.
He was talking
He
about
was. Sorry.
Olga, querida Olga. No, but I was just going to do, how do you sort of manage the difference between persevering with something that maybe it's not the right time for and saying, okay, this needs to be adjusted? So in other words, maybe my product or my song or my story, how do I sort of manage the balance between I need to change it and that's why it's being, rejected or no one's buying it right now, or versus I need to stick with it because it could just be the timing is not quite right. And if I persevere with it as it is, it'll be picked up.
Yeah. So I think going back to what I said earlier, it really depends on, you have to remember, like, what is your purpose for this thing? Is it to go viral? Then you need to write a song as if it's going to be on the radio. And that means not writing everything that you want sometimes. There are always exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, you need to research, see what's hitting the market. You can go on Amazon now and you can see, like, how certain products are doing and things like that. You can go on TikTok actually, and there's all of these like hacks to figuring out like what is doing really well, what is trending. And so honestly, if you're not doing what's trending, then you should not expect your product to go viral. But if you believe in this product for a smaller group of people, then that's great. And then be honest with yourself. Get a focus group. Ask your people that you know are going to use this product. If your friend you know is not going to use this product, your friend is not the person to ask, what do you think of this product? And there are songs that I don't show certain people, and I release them anyways, because I know if I'd ask this person what they think, they're going to say, no, don't, you got to do this different. But then that doesn't become my song. So I've had to really pivot a lot of who I am and say, you know what? I have to change my goal. My goal is not to become viral. My goal is not to become famous. And as much as that could possibly be fun, I actually don't even care about that. I just want to make really good art. I think right now there is a pressure to be content creators and constantly have, there's a brand called Shein, and it's fast fashion, and they have like tons of new pieces of clothes every single day on their website. How do you compete with that? You have to either do the same or be better. And so you just kind of have to almost like let it go, and your intuition is like, no, like don't let it go. But at the end of the day, it's so much more freeing. I love my life so much better, and I'm making things that I really care about. And so you just have to go, is it maybe worth doing some like freelance stuff so that I can have freedom to do this? It is what it is. This is the world that we live in.
That's true.
It's knowing your market. You got Nick to comment. Nick reserved. He must be in agreement with you. He does niche market thinking. Find your know your market. Know
your market. Yeah.
So that's so true for a lot of us. It's just know your market. Put the time in advance, I think, to do a little research. Especially if that's your goal.
Not even a little research. You have to research all the time. The difference
also, if that's going to be your livelihood, then obviously you need to find what the niche is. If it's not, if it's something that you, like Lily said, I just want to be myself, I want to create what I like, what makes me feel good, as long as you have another job too, then that's great, right? But if it's going to be a career, you have to do the research and say, okay, maybe I need to change what I'm writing, or maybe I need to change what the songs that I'm creating, just to make other people, so that it fits the grand population out there, right?
Yeah.
It's actually that way. All right, so para Olga. Sí, Olga better be watching.
Bueno, no importa, pero lo importante es hacerle una pregunta. Y una pregunta fácil.
Una pregunta
no tiene que ser fácil.
No, bueno, es fácil en el sentido de que no es una pregunta de política o de finanzas, nada así. Es una pregunta
tiene que ser una pregunta
sencilla.
Que yo puedo decir en español.
No, yo le pregunto yo hago la pregunta.
Yo tengo una pregunta. Sí, consejos para... Sí,
yo tenía una pregunta también.
¿Tiene unos consejos para latinos que quieren ser empresarios o latinos que son empresarios ahora para su futuro?
Bueno, creo que poner todos los latinos en una caja no sirve muy bien. No se puede decir un consejo.
Dos cajas,
no. No se puede dar solo un consejo para todos los latinos. Pero creo que si tú eres un latino aquí en Charlottesville y tú quieres crear algo diferente, solo tienes que hacer eso. Tienes que ser auténtico a quien tú eres. Y Melissa, la que comentó, me encanta lo que ella hace. Cada miércoles ella hace un video en vivo en Facebook. Y ella tiene todas sus pulseras y sus joyas. Y ella está hablando por 1 hora y media, algunas veces 2 horas. Ella habla y tiene personas que están comentando y comprando. Y para ella encontró lo que está sirviendo para lo que ella quiere hacer. Entonces yo creo que eso es lo más importante. Tú tienes que encontrar lo que es lo más fácil, o no más fácil. Tú tienes que encontrar lo que sirve para usted y tus productos y lo que tú quieres hacer en esta vida. Y creo que lo demás va a venir. Solo tienes que hacer el trabajo. Y bueno, yo sé que los latinos trabajan muy duro y muy fuerte y son personas que yo los veo y digo, oh my gosh, like, me encanta ser latina.
Y los latinos también, ¿no? Supongo. Has dicho latina, y los hombres también, latinos, trabajan también,
los
¿no?
latinos también. Soy latina.
Las dificultades con la lengua española.
Sí,
No,
sí.
no. Yo creo que ella estaba diciendo latina para ver.
Bueno, mira, hay
Mira,
muchos
yo la miro a ella,
machismos
yo
por
también.
ahí y siempre los machistas están, ¿dónde está mi mujer haciendo las tortillas? Mira, yo no puedo hacer tortillas, yo no quiero hacer tortillas, yo quiero hacer mi música, quiero, y creo que hay muchas mujeres también que dicen, yo quiero ser esposa, quiero ser mamá y también tengo este sueño. Sí. Y tú sabes, algunas veces tú tienes que con ese sueño decir, si yo quiero ser mamá, eso dice que yo no puedo poner tantas horas en esta cosa, pero siempre puedes poner algunas horas, puedes preguntarle a tus amigos, a tu esposo, las cosas están cambiando.
No hay tanto.
Oye,
sí.
entonces tú puedes preguntar por las cosas que tú quieres. Y creo que muchas mujeres latinas por fin están realizando que sí pueden hacer lo que quieren hacer. Solo tienes que preguntar o decir, no, eso es como yo quiero vivir.
Sí.
Yeah.
Bueno,
Muy bien
teníamos
dicho.
en este programa Claudia Cruz de Dulce de Leche, que es madre y también tiene su propio negocio.
Sí.
Y también en
como-
sombreros, ¿verdad?
Sí, sombreros, sí.
La familia.
La familia, toda la familia
Yeah.
trabaja en sombreros.
Sí, sí.
Sí, y Melissa de Zamora, te queremos, Lily.
¡Oh, te quiero!
Es el comentario.
Muy bien
very-
dicho, hablaste muy bien.
Sí,
Gracias.
Perfecto.
perfecto.
¿Pudiste
dices.
entender el español o no?
Sí,
No,
sí.
muy bien, no hay problema.
Yeah, so fantastic. No, very true, very true. So Lily, just to translate a little bit for the
Yeah.
English people.
I think that, so Xavier made a funny comment that I was using Latina, which is the female tense. And something that I'm really passionate about is Latina women are finally rising up and saying like, yeah, I do want to be a mom, I do want to be a wife, but I also have these other things that I'm passionate about, and like it's okay to do those things that you're passionate about. And I think there's also a balance though of, okay, well, if I want to be a wife, if I want to be a mom, it might mean having to spend less hours on this thing that I'm also passionate about. But that's okay. You just have to create a list of your priorities and say, this might only get to go so far right now.
Yep.
But that's okay. Like, it's your life. You get to choose how
Choose
it
what you
goes,
wanna
and
do,
you don't
right,
have
exactly.
to buy into this hustle culture of constantly doing things and burning yourself out. It makes me really sad to see the hustle culture. And
Yeah.
I was definitely like very into that for a long time, and it was like killing me inside. And I'm
It's
only
almost like
24.
it's true. It's almost like there is, I think, a pressure that unless you become extremely successful, like you've somehow failed as a small business. Like you can't just put out there and say, I want to be a small business and I don't actually want to grow beyond. Like if the price of me growing beyond a certain size
Yeah.
is that I don't get to spend any time with my family, I have to work from 7 in the morning to 7 at night to take my business to the next level. Like it's okay to say I don't actually want to go
Yeah,
there.
it really
There are
is.
other priorities that I have. And I think one of the beauties of entrepreneurship is it allows you to make that choice. Like you're not boxed in there saying, well, you have no choice but to work these hours on these days and doing this thing. With entrepreneurship, you can say, I'm going to prioritize how I want this to go and the flexibility. It doesn't mean like there's less work. Like
Yeah.
it's not like entrepreneurs work less than other people, but it allows you to prioritize how you want your life to go and to be flexible in that way.
And that's important. I think, and I think to a certain respect, that's a little bit of an American culture. It's like we just work, and sometimes we don't sit back and enjoy the day. You know, we always talk about this, and when you go to Europe, the
At least they
Europeans
used to
have
before it became Americanized.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that much anymore, but they used to enjoy the day, right? And so sometimes in here we think about so much about succeeding that we don't seem to enjoy the day, and then you wake up and you're 50 or 60 years old, and it's like, I'm very successful, but 50
and what
years
even
from
is
by.
the definition of success? Is
Exactly.
it this one that your parents put on you? Is it one like, I have to be the next Amazon? Like, actually, you don't need to be the next Amazon. Amazon is actually kind of toxic.
That's a real.
So
That's a real. I heard. That's a. Boy, that's a tough.
I'm not sure I want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Utol Mana de Dawson Andele, I think that is Claudia Cruz's mom. She was very proud of being Latina. Saludos.
Hola,
She sends you a lot of
saludos.
Etso. So she's very happy that they like that. That encouragement for Latinas especially.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede. No, es verdad. Yeah, and I think it's all about really just on the entrepreneurship side, knowing what you want out of it. I think is important to keep in mind. Because I know you do multiple things. I guess in order to be able to do your artistic part, your singing, your songwriting, your creative part there. You're also creative, I guess, in a more freelance, like I don't want to say business kind of way, but you do a lot of branding. You use your artwork, because Lily is a great artist as well as in terms of the music sphere, because you use your talents, I know, to make branding for companies. You did For Adelante's logo. Was made by Lily. So just take a look at that. You can see it on the screen there. So how do you sort of balance those two things? Because I know you have this freelance that you do and this work that you do in addition to the music.
Yeah.
And so do you find yourself having to choose between them, or are you able to sort of think about it in advance and just have it flow into one another and be sort of a natural balance?
Yeah, I don't do freelance anymore.
You don't?
I only do it.
That was a
good question.
It was such a good question.
I was uninformed before the interview on that question.
We've talked about it, I thought. I only do freelance for friends or people that are like, hey, I can't really afford this. I need help. And so I'll do some consulting or, some like free sessions or help them. I also have this like life philosophy, I guess, that I want to do at least one free project a year for charity. So that helps me to keep my portfolio up in case I ever do want to go back into freelancing, but also as a way I feel like to give back of my time and my talents. And I don't balance it. So I can't answer the question. About that question now. But I do have another job, and it is in an area that I am passionate about, but also I feel like it's not something I really talk about, I've decided, because for me, it's not what I want. Your online branding is your online branding, right? And it's not what I want my online branding to look like. But the people who know me the best and the people that are around me obviously are going to know. But I think that if you're building a specific brand online, just try to remember that, and you don't need to put everything out there.
Yep.
And you can still be wildly authentic. But you don't have to put everything. Yeah.
You don't have to be a completely open book.
Yeah, I think I was
authentic.
I was doing freelance because it was pretty good money, and I was young and I could do it, and a lot of people in town couldn't do it. And I was cheap compared to a lot of other companies. And so I think that kind of I've heard from other entrepreneurs or people that are successful in their own right, they always say they did this thing and it got them into this thing and it got them into that thing and that thing.
Sort of build.
Yeah, and I love that. I love living that kind of life where it's okay, where is this going? Where is it going to take me next? But also living in the moment and being okay with this is what it looks like right now. And not comparing myself to other 24-year-olds who somehow have everything that they wanted and they're living the lifestyle they want.
Or appear to.
Yeah, or appear to, right? Because it's their online brand. I just try really hard not to compare. And if it means not following certain people on Instagram, that just means not following certain people on Instagram. So...
Yeah, back to who you surround yourself with. We have one more comment. So a message from Mrs. Urbi that Nicholas is sending us.
Oh, hi.
So she's not on Facebook. She says, "My dream daughter sending love." So I guess if Mrs. Irby wanted a daughter, it would want to be you.
Hi, Jan.
All right, well, Lily, this has been so much fun.
Yeah, it has
Thank
been.
you so much for
a couple of really
coming
key
on.
words there.
Yeah,
right?
I think some real key
authenticity. Failure is not an option, right? I mean,
Perseverance.
Perseverance.
You know, being aware.
Which is what we hear with so many, entrepreneurs and creative people is like, they have their dreams, and no matter how we need to, the circuitous route to get there, we're going to find a way to get there. And it was interesting also to hear, and Jerry says all the time, I don't want negative people around me. I want people to bring positive aura, right? Because in life, that's what you need. You need positivity. You want to think positive. You want.
Well, I was saying there's enough barriers out there
there's
that
enough,
are pushing you bad. That you don't need to
look for more.
add for.
That's
You don't
right.
need to
Don't
add
look for
more.
Yeah, I think I would reframe that failure is not an option to more being like, it's okay to fail.
No, but you got to get up and keep going.
Reframe it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like it doesn't have to be this big thing. It can just mean like this one thing wasn't how I wanted it to go.
Yeah. Almost like to look at failure as we perceive it, not as a permanent state, like, oh, I failed, X, it's over, but as like a stepping stone. Like the Edison, I learned 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Like that failure
and
is a stepping stone.
I always look at it very simplicity. I remember the first steps that babies make, and I remember all three sons, the first step, and then they fall. And it's like they don't really want to get up and do it again, but you pick them up and you sit them up again, and they do it. And eventually, you know what? Unfortunately, then they start walking. Then you're really in trouble.
And then they start making you do shows for Facebook, right?
So thank you so much, Lily. Really, really appreciate you coming on. I know, and Laura Munoz says, "Hola, Lily."
Hola, Laura.
So thank you again. It's been so much fun. It's always fun to have you and Fernando, and hopefully one day Olga.
Yeah,
we'll have her on.
Next time you come into the office, though, you got to see me, not him, so we can chat about real
Every
things.
time I go, you're not there.
He's always working in the back office.
I tell you, it's a dinger every time she sees me.
Every time. Thank you, Lily.
Yeah,
thank you, Lily.
You guys.
All right, and thank you guys. This has been a really fun show. We went all the way.
Well, that's Lily, though. I mean,
she's always fun to talk to.
She likes to chat. That's what it is. She comes into the office just to chat. She gets nothing else done, right?
No, we did a little bit of finance talk in between the catching up, but
it was one. I haven't seen her in a long time.
And that family is just—it's a boatload of energy and positivity and entrepreneurship. There's always something new you learn. Like we learned so much from Fernando when he came on.
Exactly.
And we learned so much from Lily. I think that you can really
and the
take
parents,
to heart.
I mean, every time we met with their parents,
Fernando
it was wonderful.
And Hazel, I know.
And of course, Olga.
And the other sister, Anna. We gotta get Anna on, maybe on
Skype.
On Skype. We'll
See,
figure out.
I knew that. I knew how to say Skype there.
You knew the Skype part. Well, we'll talk with Judah. We'll see if we can figure out how we can get simultaneously all three siblings on.
Oh boy,
to the show and see how that goes.
He's already having a heart attack, I think.
Yeah, he's already having
nervous breakdown.
But as always, thank you all so much for joining us. Next week we're going to have someone from it is Odyssey Chocolate.
Whoa.
Is going to come on. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a chocolate, hopefully the chocolate maker himself, at least the owner, but also possibly the chocolate maker. So that's going to be a blast. Hopefully they'll bring some chocolate and we can eat it on air because we never turn down chocolate.
Never.
So thank you as always for joining us. We really appreciate it. Without you watching, there would be no show. Be sure to like us, comment, let us know what you thought of today's show. Share it with your friends so they can learn, more about the things we talked about with Lily today, a little bit about the Roth IRA and traditional IRAs, just trying to bring you a lot of information, and
little by little, because too much is overwhelming. So it's always a little tip at a time.
Exactly.
Like the donut tip. That's a good one.
That
was a good one.
Is that supposed to be their major takeaway from today?
It's
to
possible.
have the donuts ready?
That is possible. You just never know.
Have donuts and write yourself an email.
I'll tell you what. I'm buying donuts tonight. That's all I know. Tomorrow morning is going to be a great day.
So as always, we are presented by Emergent Financial Services. We are powered by Cristel Noel State Farm Agency, and we are partnering with Forward Adelante. And thanks again to Jerry Judah, I Love Seville Network. You can always find us here. And so thank you once again for joining us, and we will see you next week. And until then, have a good week, and we will see you hasta mañana.